Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Okay, based upon Sam's travel north on the I-15 corridor, we're assuming that he is in a very, very narrowly constricted canyon that probably has cut off his cell coverage. So anyway, you're stuck with me for the next little while. But we were talking before the break about how Greenland was back in the spotlight big time at this particular time. We've got Vice President and his wife are visiting there. We've got the NSA guy, Mike Waltz, there. We've got Energy Secretary Chris Wright there. And, this is kind of a full court press that it seems like is going on. People say, why Greenland? What the heck? I mean, who are they? What are they about? And it's interesting to me that I spent some time with the alliance that keeps it's a Canadian-American alliance to the NORAD, they call it, North American Air Defense Command, many years ago. I'm sure they've probably changed so that I would hardly recognize them, but we had, I mean, it wasn't just me by any means. I had a small role to play in this thing. But there were early warning systems that were up across the whole northern tier of, up through the Arctic and everything. The reason was because any launch of almost anything, especially incoming missiles or strategic air command kinds of airplanes that could bring in nukes, would come over a polar kind of approach from the north, because that is the shortest route between them and us. And of course, everything's dramatically changed now. The era I was in, satellite observations were relatively new, but the radar systems and everything were early warning systems. At any rate, longer story than you probably need to hear. But all of that entry corridor, if you will, has been watched for forever, based upon even my life's experience. But this northern approach that's through the Arctic, with the Greenland kind of segment in it, has not been exactly dark, and certainly with satellite observations, it's really much safer than it used to be. But that approach has been far less focused on than what we had for NORAD, and so we do know that the Soviet Union and China they're growing their capacity and capability in those Arctic regions, particularly up around Greenland. And so Putin, in fact, has made some recent statements about they're going to continue their presence there to make certain that they have, a fair playing field, so to speak, from their perspective. Okay. So anyway, we do have China and Russia that have got a real interest in Greenland also. And so Trump is interested in a lot of things in Greenland, I think. I mean, maybe his initial, strategic metals and rare earth things and things like that, and the energy and all that. Greenland is an untapped oasis of some very valuable stuff that can be harvested. But beyond that, too, is from a military presence. And so I think that all of this combined together has kind of brought Trump to a point where he's saying, yeah, let's look into bringing this on board. And before the break, Sam was talking about, could we do another Louisiana Purchase? And everything we've been told to this point has been, no, we're not interested. We're not going to sell out to you. And, the Greenlanders want to be independent, and I can understand that, certainly. And Denmark Greenland is a protectorate of Denmark, and Denmark has been rather remiss in their relationship with Greenland, I believe, up to this point. I think they've kind of been looked at as, oh, yeah, they're out there, too, in the middle of the water someplace. I don't know. But at any rate, I think there's been some frustration on the part of the Greenlanders in many ways because of, the orphan child status that they seem to have with Denmark. But neither the Greenlanders or the Danish seem to have expressed any interest in any of the overtures that Trump has made. But yet and still, we have had a presence in Greenland too. I mean, we had a very major air base there, and it was used as a kind of a shuttle point for World War II aircraft even that long ago, as they were being flown to the European theater. And we maintained that base and continued to grow it. And so we do have a presence there. I believe it's one of the space agency groups now. I'm not so sure exactly what they're calling it. But we do still have a military presence there for space operations and so on, with the new arm that was broken off of the Air Force. So anyway, Greenland right now is kind of in the crosshairs of Russia, China, the United States, and I don't know if they're relishing their newfound popularity. But some of the stuff I've seen in the news media has been a strong endorsement of the NATO alliance, because Greenland and Denmark are both part of the NATO alliance. And, that's we all go to war if anybody goes to war kind of organization. And, it's unconstitutional as the day is long, and vastly is in violation of the American founding fathers' perspective on entangling alliances. And Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization requires anybody and everybody to go to war if anybody gets stumbled over. So it's truly an entangling alliance, and you can see from World War I exactly how destructive such an arrangement is. But the establishment media and the establishment organizations, the deep state, if you will, thinks that NATO ought to be strengthened and that we ought to operate through NATO. And by the way, NATO is a regional arrangement under the United Nations Charter, absolutely, and they admit that up front in the treaty. So regional arrangements are basically sub-global kinds of arrangements to make sure that global government gets put into place. So NATO is wrong at every single term and intent. But that's what the deep state establishment is saying. No, let's strengthen NATO, and the United States doesn't need to dink around with thing on their sovereignty issue, and so I can see where they're coming from, because they like to strengthen the globalist kind of perspective. But from my perspective, if there isn't a handshake all the way around and they want to join and become part of the United States or anything, I can see them resisting that. But I'm not completely against bilateral agreements that wherein the United States and Greenland negotiate an arrangement that helps facilitate the things that we're interested in having, some kind of more access to natural resources, an opportunity to be able to hold a presence there, to be able to look to the northern skies against any kind of invasion thing. Again, I tend to downplay that a little bit because of the ability to keeping watch over the flock by night through our satellite assets. But the actual presence of Russia and China in the area, we need to maintain a presence probably there too. We do have a deep water navy, and it's been one of the reasons we've been safe and protected from invasion, because we got this big moat around us. And if we're keeping an eye on how invasions might occur, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have an eye there too. Anyway, I've probably beat that to death in why Trump and his administration seem so interested in this, but I think it's something that's important for all of us to understand, that this is not just some ice-covered island out there that doesn't play any part in any of our future. It could, and so it needs to be carefully watched. And I'm not sure that we're going to come to closure on this thing during the Trump administration, but he's sure putting a full court press into this thing. So, having said all that, and apparently Sam's not back on the air yet, so I'll just go on with some of the things we talked about. Say again? Okay. Sam apparently is, you can tell by the radio silence that Sam's experiencing that he's not with us. Anyway, another big thing that was an issue was the next issue that came up during the webinar was Trump moving ahead with his tariffs on automobiles particularly, and how that might play out. So sounds like we've got to take another interim break, and I guess Sam pays bills with these things or something, I don't know. And then we'll come back after that, and maybe we'll spend a few minutes on this. So stand by. We'll be back.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcasts at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines. Build a strong cyber attack response. Secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
Okay, at this point, Sam is still incommunicado, radio silence, and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to hear the mile-a-minute review of stuff like what came up on the webinar that we held last night. And I think these are pertinent because these are real-world current events that people are interested in. So the question we broached before that last little break was that Trump, and this has caused a big stir with a lot of people, the idea of tariffs. And of course, constitutionally, tariffs are delegated to Congress. Congress shall have power too. Go read Article 1, Section 8. Start from the very beginning. Constitutionally, tariffs are constitutional, if you will. Now, they have been used for centuries, literally, as weapons. And they caused a great deal of grief in the colonies period of time. They nearly caused a civil war in the late 1820s. The way they were used as weapons in the South felt impinged upon by the North, and literally all through the centuries, tariffs have been used not just as a money source. Now, by the way, the 45th Federalist paper is very specific. James Madison said that's where we're supposed to get most of our money to run the country. And so all of these things kind of play into this thing. And at this particular point, Trump is pushing along with this idea that, we're going to have fairness. We're going to have a level playing field as we deal with other nations and the way we do trade.
Very interesting, Dr. Bradley. I was able to go through the canyon. I missed some of what you said, but a lot of it I heard about. a lot of the NORAD, related to Canada and everything else, and how we have an obligation to be there. Russia and China are kind of interested in Greenland as well. And you mentioned you didn't think that the people of Greenland would be interested in becoming part of the United States, but we ought to have some kind of an understanding between us and Greenland. And I agree with that. There's only 60,000 people that live there, and they may want to become the 51st state. I know the discussion is about Canada becoming the 51st state, but it may be that Greenland might want to join the United States. I mean, there's some real advantages to them if they did so. I don't have a problem if we expand as a country, as long as we don't have a methodology, as long as we work out a way that would be fair and equitable to the self-determination of the people of Greenland. I don't have a problem with it, as long as we keep that in mind. It's self-determination for those people. But we've got to solve some of the problems with our Indian reservations, solve some of the problems with some of the territories we have as well. I don't like this kind of second-class citizen status that we put some of these groups in. So we need to go forward in an equitable way. Is kind of the way that I look at it. What are your quick thoughts on that?
Well, you bring up a whole bunch of interesting things that I think we could spend a whole lot of time on. The
sure.
fact that we have territories and these kind of unresolved issues that are really big issues for the whole nation and the people that we tend to have put under our umbrella. But you mentioned Canada as the 51st state. It's interesting to me that the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, that was a failure formula, that a lot of people that wanted to go to a con want to re-implement some of the stuff that's in the Articles of Confederation, where they want to rewrite our Constitution. Well, you don't, I don't, and I certainly don't, and it's a battleground right now. But in that Articles of Confederation, Canada was offered the olive branch, if you will, to join with the United States and become a part of the new endeavor of a new nation. And so it's interesting that some of this stuff goes around. We tried to obtain Greenland years ago. There's been overt actions
we made an offer and it got turned down, right?
Right. And so here we are again at this particular juncture. It's not like we haven't been down this road before. And if you have a reasonable understanding of history, you can say, oh, yeah, here we are again. But certainly self-determination is a real important thing for everybody, and Greenland is in the sights, so to speak, of this administration.
Yeah, I'm self-determined that I want to get rid of the judge, jury, and executioner called the IRS. That's just my self-determination efforts. And so I digress, except for, people really should be able to decide for themselves, and it's certainly a hot button right now. And I think people don't know the history, and they don't know how to kind of look at it. Oftentimes it's not whether something gets done or not, whether it's constitutional or not, it's how it's done, right?
Absolutely. These kinds of things can be done the wrong way, and it just exacerbates problems. We moved on to tariffs a little bit, but here's one that was a really big issue that was on the webinar, and it has to do with this.
By the way, before we get to that, you can finish on tariffs. You were basically saying that, hey, tariffs are the proper way to fund the country. I think tariffs and apportionment taxes among the states based on population, indirect taxes are the key to that exercise. That's what I mean by, hey, taxes are not 100% wrong, and taxes in general are theft. But there is, according to Bastier, the law, there is a defensive mechanism role that says, hey, there's some legitimacy here to where you've got to give up enough freedom to maximize freedom, and you've got to give up enough, ability to make sure that mechanism, that source of, I don't know if I ought to use the word force, but can prevent or repel a greater force of evil. And where's that balance? And when government's in its defensive mode as opposed to its offensive mode, then I think we've achieved, if we obey the contract with the American people, appropriate constitutional government. When we cross that line from defensive to offensive, that's when we lose the ball here. That's when we, in my opinion, become the aggressor and we become out of line. I mean, is that the designation that you would articulate?
Well, largely, you mentioned Frederick Bastier. He, an incredible little Frenchman, died in 1850. Just before his death, he wrote that book you mentioned, The Law. He was a great economist, a philosopher, a statesman, all those kinds of things. But in his mentioning the fact that Bastiat loved, he adored, he almost worshipped the American founding fathers, with two exceptions. Not individual exceptions, but exceptions in philosophy, and that was slavery. He was irritated the Americans hadn't, by 1850, solved their slavery problem. And the second thing was their tariff problem, because he saw the United States moving with, some of these abominable tariffs that were implemented in the late 1820s that were very, very aggressively wrong. And he felt that tariffs, well, if they have their place, they are not to be used and weaponized, if you will.
And so that's what Donald's doing that we stand against. We're for tariffs, but the way they're being used, again, that's why I brought up, it's not oftentimes what you do, it's how you do it that is the discussion here, right?
Well, true, but the way Trump is spinning it is that it is a tit for tat kind of thing. Look, if you guys are going to beat the snot out of us with tariffs, we're going to reciprocate with that. Now, some of Canadian tariffs on some of the products, the United States is shipping to them are over 200%. And so there's some aggressive tariff things that are out there right now. And so if people could become more reasonable about this, some of the stuff Trump's doing might have some benefit. But to use it as a weaponized kind of international diplomacy kind of thing, Bastiat looked at that rather askance. He felt like that's stuff that wars are made out of. In fact, that's kind of basically what started the Revolutionary War.
Wars are made out of, but it pits people against one another. It creates an unlevel. You had kind of mentioned before I jumped in here, this level playing field, this honoring of contracts. There's a proper role for limited government to play, and this violates all of that, right?
Yeah, we need to recognize that this golden rule kind of thing, do unto others kind of thing, and there is a place, and they have a role, but to use them kind of as the big stick, if you will, to do things, like I say,
you create a moral hazard financially and economically, right?
We do indeed, and literally some of the stuff we're doing economically, like when we impose sanctions and stuff on different countries, those are acts of war, literally and truthfully, and that's what Britain was doing in the start of the War of 1812. I mean, they were the mistress of the sea, and they were going to tell us who we could deal with, who we couldn't deal with, who we trade with, blah, blah, blah. We do that all the time. I mean, we got it right now in Russia and Iran, and I mean, we've got sanctions on people.
We unconstitutionally, criminally do that all the time.
Indeed. So we need to take a lesson from our history and say, well, this is inappropriate, and this is, we can do this. This will be fine. But we, the consumer, are going to pay. I mean, Trump says, we're going to bring American industry home. We're going to have more automobiles built here and all this kind of stuff. And there's a movement in that direction. But initially, you think of 25% on cars. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be, but let's say they had $4,000. When you get a tariff on there, the people that are paying the tariff are not going to eat it. They're going to pass it through to the consumer. And if
they want to abolish the IRS so that we're not paying double, I'm all for it. But what Trump's managed to do is stack these tariffs on us and not give us relief on the other side of the discussion. So it's an external tariff that internal people pay, and now we're paying the IRS, the criminal organization, and the tariffs. We need relief, Doctor.
Well, and that's where we say proper principles got to be restored, and a restoration of proper principle will only happen if we go back to the principles the nation was founded on. Those Americanist principles have got to hold full sway again, and people that are in office need to understand that, and most of them don't, I don't believe.
Sad but true, ladies and gentlemen. There's a whole lot more to talk about. Hey, man, you got a green card? Are you a citizen? How about a gold card, ladies and gentlemen? You want one of them? Yeah, they're pitching those babies. It'll raise a lot of money. It'll bring a lot of money into the United States. It's a good thing. We'll talk about it in seconds with a good doctor, Dr. Scott Bradley. FreedomsRisingSun.com, and yours truly continue on your radio. This is the one and only Liberty Roundtable live on your radio.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to clear the way for a resumption of the deportation of illegal Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador. The administration citing an 18th century wartime law to justify the deportations. The president looks to make an historic change in the federal government's relationship with its workforce, look for lawsuits to follow.
Citing a 1978 law, the president said he has the authority to end collective bargaining with federal unions and agencies because of their role in safeguarding national security. The executive order affects most of the federal government. However, police and firefighters will be exempt. The American Federation of Government Employees, which represents more than 800,000 government workers, said it is preparing immediate legal action. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Utah has become the first state to ban fluoride in drinking water as Republican Governor Spencer Cox signs a new law. Leading defense policy expert cautions of possible Iranian retaliation here at home if the U.S. military hits targets inside Iran.
Former Senator Jim Talent says there's a good chance Iran would deploy sleeper cells in a bid to assassinate the president.
Yeah, I would think that's almost a dead certainty if we were to attack Iran directly.
Talent says the people of Iran may demand a response from their own government.
They've been hurt very badly, and it is a region where strength and success matters.
Talent tells the Salem Radio Network that's why Iran's regime may feel a need to strike some kind of blow inside the U.S. just to remain in power. Bob Agnew reporting.
Multiple high water rescues across South Texas, intense thunderstorms in the Rio Grande Valley have unleashed flash floods. Wall Street losing ground following updates on inflation and consumer sentiment. The Dow is down more than 500 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Don't settle for less. Your dog deserves the best. That's why we created Dr. Fido's, a plant-based dog food topper packed with 40 ingredients made with whole foods from carrots to bananas. And the best part? No cooking, no chopping, just stir it into their food. Go to drfidos.com and subscribe today and save $20 a month. Vet developed, dog trusted. This is the human-grade dog food topper that gives you peace of mind. Dogs can't write 5-star reviews, but their owners have.
I've always thought that dog food seems like a little bland, and so this helps give it a little bit of flavor, just something interesting for them, and yeah, they really love it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
Go to drfidos.com and subscribe to save $20 each month. That's drphytos.com.
I believe there will come a time when we are all judged on whether or not we took a stand in defense of all life from the moment of conception until our last natural breath. As a teenager, I gave my first public speech in my church. My hand shook, my heart pounded. I thought to myself, I can't do this, but somehow I did, and because I wanted to talk about things that were important, I persisted. I chided my church as a senior in high school for not seeming to care about the not yet born, for looking the other way, and for not taking a stand on life. I will be in earnest. I will not equivocate, and I will not excuse. I will not retreat an inch, and I will be heard. One thing I promise you, I will always take a stand for life.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at cspoa.org. That's cspoa.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, Dr. Scott Bradley, doctor in the studio, Sam Bushman on the road. It'll be back to normal next show. Thanks for your patience with us. We're talking about this issue of Greenland. We're talking about this issue of tariffs. We're talking about this issue of, all kind of things. And it's interesting. They seem to be related. We've got a lot of international discussions going on. I personally think we've got to focus a lot more domestically. Let's abolish the IRS. Tariffs are great, but not if you add tariffs on top of the burden the American people are already dealing with. That's one of the big kind of issues. But I mentioned this issue about green cards, about citizens, about this new gold card, Doctor. Are you familiar with this gold card? They say it'll raise tons of money. They say that it can raise up to $5 trillion and pay down our debt. They say there's about 37 million people in the world that actually have the wherewithal to pay $5 million and get a green or a gold card. And what do you think of the gold card idea, Doctor?
Well, in a phrase, I think it's Bravo Sierra. And here's why. What we're doing with this kind of access is an elitist kind of approach to things. I mean, these oligarchs that are around the world that can buy their way in, they're going to potentially be a dynamic that changes our whole form of government. They'll bring with them the form of government that they knew before. Virtually none of them, if any of them at all, have any understanding at all about anything other than the wealth buys power. And that's not the Americanist way. The second thing about it is potentially that we will end up basically going to the highest bidder. There's people that think of all the Chinese communists that have made a fortune off of their slave labor there and everything like that. They're currently buying American landscape. They're buying our agricultural land. And of course, at this point, they don't have that much, but I know little communities that have basically had their businesses bought out by China. And so
a lot of times they've bought land near our bases and other places that are very dangerous indeed, too, right?
Agreed. And if you think that trillions of dollars are going to be brought in that are going to be deflected into retiring the debt, I think I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. That the fact of the matter is that all of these things come with big promises that are never fulfilled. I mean, I look at the Doge things that are coming out. First of all, we've never enacted them with Congress, which means they're smoke and mirrors at this point. But let's say that we do, and let's say that, we're saving $2 trillion in this particular area over 10 years. I have never, ever, ever, in all of my born days, more than 50 years of focused energy on this thing, ever seen any of that come to fruit. They make these long-term, 10-year forecast about good and all of the wonderful things that are going to happen. We spend the money along the way as if it was water. They never,
Congress
ever
has a 2-year stint. Every member of the House only has a 2-year stint. I want to see what you're going to do for me within that time frame, right?
Well, here's the deal. In 10 years, you're going to have 5 elections. And in those 5, that congressman could be swapped out 5 times, okay? And the fact of the matter is there's no legislature that will be bound in the future by a legislature today. You cannot guarantee that these things are going to happen. So I think all of these things are really grand and glorious and grandiose even promises about this value that's going to be brought. And I think that we're going to sell the nation out for a mess of pottage and gold, if you will, or whatever you want to call it.
Now, let me tell you the other thing that I find interesting about this. Here's what I find interesting about this. While they're telling you that they're going to pay down the debt with the $5 trillion, if they did, that anytime we can reduce our debt, it'll be a wise thing. But the debt's created out of thin air. Therefore, it should be abolished out of thin air, in my opinion. But what they're also talking about is giving the American people, if we save money from Doge, everybody's going to get a big check. And all they're going to do is basically just re-engineer a different redistribution of wealth. It's like, hey, do you want the Republican redistribution of wealth plan or the Democrat plan or the Trump plan or the Biden plan or the, whatever plan? And they're already talking about that too. So they're talking about spending more money by giving you money back. And the last thing I want is me to give my money to the government so they can give it back to me, right?
The filter it goes through always leaves stuff behind. And so every time they do these things, they just get out of my way, let me live my life, stop trying to buy my vote. And
don't hurt me, don't take my stuff, right?
Right. And so this idea of selling the country to the highest bidder is really, in my opinion, it's fraught with danger. And it's like, oh my goodness, boy, that would be a real influx of money. You know what? I have known people that came here with a big pot of money, and they literally have been buying. I mean, there is some stuff in place right now. If you bring in business to this country, you're facilitating your citizenship. But I've never seen, and again, I don't have an across-the-board understanding of everybody that's ever come in and all the good or bad that they've done, but I've never seen in the experiences I've had where they've really brought a lot to the table, and they've basically bought a citizenship on some smoke and mirror promises. So
Trump believes that there's 37 million people in the world that could take advantage of this, meaning they have the wherewithal to do that. He believes about 1 million will take advantage of it. So 1 million times 5 million, kind of thing.
Do the math, but here's the Sam. Okay, so how many Saudi princes that are basically completely uninitiated in the Americanist philosophy? How many Chinese oligarchs or Russian oligarchs or Ukrainian oligarchs? I don't know. I don't care who they come from, but they will bring with them the form of government that they are immersed in at this time, and it will just further. We're bringing in our own flavor of destruction of our Americanist philosophies of a constitutional republic, limited government, checks and balances, delegated authority, all that kind of stuff. They don't have a clue. I want it. I'm going to buy it. I mean, that's their attitude, and that's the way they've lived their whole lives.
The question becomes, will they have all the rules of swearing allegiance to the United States and jetting their ties to the old country? And, the immigrations of yesteryear versus the immigrations of today are vastly different as well, right?
Well, absolutely. I think my grandmother was the last immigrant, if you will, in my family line that came in. She came in the 1890s through Ellis Island. And she was so thoroughly American. I mean, I used to talk to her when I was a kid. Hey, Grandma, teach me Danish. No, we speak American in this family. We are Americans. I mean, she was just a rabid devotee to what this nation was about. And I don't think that we're finding that with new immigrants. I think that, you go down to Walmart or someplace and you think you're in a third world country based upon the jibber jabber that's going on there. And I think that's fine. Everybody needs, if they're here legally, they got to have a transition period. But the fact is, most of the people that are coming still fly the flag of their homeland. It's somewhere, on the back dash of
do you
their
want
car
real people that embrace the principles of America, or do you want the balkanization of the country, right?
And that's kind of what it's bringing. And if there's 37 million or whatever million number there is, and there's one that do it, that's just another million people to dilute the understanding that this nation was founded on. And there's probably some in there that really would want to embrace, like my grandmother, the whole philosophy. But by and large, if you come with that silver spoon or golden spoon or whatever you want to call it in your mouth, I think that they're going to find that they can buy anything they want in this country because of their riches and wealth. And if they've bought their citizenship that way and suddenly they're entitled, well, it just smacks of danger to me. And I guess I'm maybe a little reactive, but I'm very concerned.
Let's talk about the deportation. There's efforts to deport some of these MS-13 gang members and deport some of these people and everything else. That's a big battle where judges and Trump are at odds on this and having a battle over this. And that's a critical detail, right?
Well, indeed it is, and where the district judges fit in this whole formula. And in fact, at some time, and I know we got to take a break here pretty quick, and maybe I'll spend a little time talking about this, because this is a critical matter that is kind of on our plate right now. And the fact that here's, these district judges, I mean, they have a little tiny geography that they have some kind of power over. I hate to even say it.
Somehow we allow them to have national repercussions, to say the least. And the question that I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
The question I want to ask before the break that I want you to kind of consider and answer along with some of these discussions, and eventually you can get to Kristi Noem and some of those details as well. But if we deport an MS-13 thug gang member, or some of these people that are mentally ill, or some of these people that have other countries have emptied their prisons to bring into the United States, if we deport that guy because he's a bad guy, but then we import one of these billionaires that can put up $5 million to become a quote citizen, is that guy that's rich in the nice suit is he less dangerous to us than the guy we just deported that's a member of MS-13 or whatever? And I find that the people in suits and the people that appear to be at the top of the pyramid tend to be oftentimes worse criminals than the obvious criminals. Just saying. So when we get back, Dr. Bradley can respond to that and finish the broadcast. I'll jump off for a meeting that I have here, but I appreciate all of you. We love you. And God save America, right? Hang tight.
As a parent, is receiving a faith-based, character-focused education for your children difficult to find? Do you believe that godly principles should be a central component in your child's education? Imagine a school where faith and integrity are at its center, where heritage and responsibility instill character. For over 40 years, American Heritage School has been educating both hearts and minds, bringing out academic excellence. This is the school where character and embracing the providence of a living God are fundamental, where students' national test scores average near the 90th percentile. With American Heritage School's Advanced Distance Education Program, distance is no longer an issue. With an accredited LDS-oriented curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade, your children can attend from anywhere in the world. American Heritage School will prepare your child for more than a job. It will prepare them for life. To learn more, visit american-heritage.org. That's american-heritage.org.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20-plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Okay, so Sam, as he walked out the door, figuratively speaking, just was kind of commiserating and wondering about who's more dangerous. Is it the MS-13 guy or the really rich oligarch that might buy their way into the country? And I guess it's hard to answer that specifically. If an MS-13 guy kills you on the street because of a drive-by shooting, I guess that's pretty 100% bad for you. But the oligarch guy or gal that comes in, I mean, you look at what's happened with some of these really, 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 really rich people that changed the dynamic of some of the past elections with some of their social media programs and philosophies that they brought forth. You look at some of these people that gave huge donations to things that facilitated a death jab for all of us. These kind of people can have a real massive effect. I mean, they're kind of, totalitarian kind of effects on the nations. And so on an individual case basis, maybe MS-13 can have some really, really bad bumps in the road for individuals and people. And maybe the drug trade gets tweaked one way or the other with people like that. But and the killings that are done under contract, whatever. Some of these people that could come, and I'm surely wrong in trying to paint with that broad brush, but I'm just concerned that sometimes the undertow they bring. I mean, the George Soroses, for example. I mean, there's a guy, or the Henry Kissingers. I mean, these guys came from foreign locations and look at the damage they did in our country and Soros continues to do. I mean, and so I just don't think we ought to be selling citizenship that way. So, I may be completely wrong, but I think it's food for thought. Put it in the pipe and smoke it, as we used to say. I've got some of these as we got off on this tangent of my webinar that I do, and I think these are pertinent questions because they do come up. They're on people's minds, and I'll just give you a few here. I don't know which to pick, and you guys aren't going to get to vote, which maybe is an American. I don't know, but some of the big issues that came up had to do with this Twitter chat stuff that was Signal that people got involved in, and the Democrats are trying to kill the Trump administration because a couple of his people did some really stupid things. We could talk about that. We could talk about Kristi Noem going down to the prison camps in El Salvador and Colombia. Just briefly, this will be a toss-off. I mean, I heard about this, somebody, I think her name was Kamala Harris. I can't remember for sure. Anyway, she was called to be the czar of the border. So, I don't know if she ever got within 50 miles of a hot spot on the border. She never looked at it. And Kristi went down, and she's been in the prisons, boots on the ground kind of thing. She's interviewed the administration. She's had, little Kodak moments with the prisoners in the background and stuff like that. I take my hat off to her. A first-hand eyewitness account of conditions, and when she's sitting in some kind of a Trump meeting and it comes up, she's been there, done that. I think that's good. I think she should have been down there. Another issue that came up in the webinar last night was the Trump executive order about elections, security, integrity. Everybody wants that. You'd think, everybody. Both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And I think there's some things that need to be discussed there about how this isn't going to hold and it's going to be challenged and it violates the Constitution and everything else like that. In spite of the fact we all want it to happen, there's a right way to happen. Maybe we can come back to that one. How about this one? Could Congress get rid of some of these troublesome federal district courts? Could they? Well, sure, absolutely, unequivocally, totally and completely. Let me just talk on that one for a second. Maybe we'll get back to some of these other ones too. I know my time is always short and I have these long-winded responses, but I think people ought to know. They ought to think about this kind of stuff. And the fact of the matter is Congress has the authority to create and dissolve these district courts. They do. I mean, you look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 9, if I recall correctly. Let me get my Constitution out here. Well, just very briefly. Congress shall have power to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. Well, so these guys can create them and dissolve them. And then you go over to the third article, which is the judicial article. Section 1, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. Okay, so they are embedded in the Constitution. They're there. You can't do nothing about them. They are there. Now, they can try to manipulate the number of justices and so on, but you can't get rid of the Supreme Court. Going on. And such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Then let me go on because some of this is important too. The judges, both in the Supreme and inferior court, shall hold their offices during good behavior, not for life. If they screw up, if they do stuff that's bad, you can impeach them and get them out. Doesn't happen nearly often enough. And shall at stated times receive for their services compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. So they can't dink around with their salaries because that, power over a man's subsistence is a power over the man. You read about that. Federalist Papers, Hamilton wrote about that a couple of times. But the fact of the matter is that there are checks and balances, and Congress can create and dissolve some of these courts out there, okay? And it's a possibility. Now, you're going to get a huge blowback. If you get rid of the Washington, D.C. District Court, there's going to be a lot of grief. But Congress needs to recognize that if these turkeys get out of line, and particularly if they get bad behavior, they can respond. And honestly, the people from both sides of the aisle ought to say, you know what? Judges cannot direct national issues. I mean, you get a little district court judge, piddly kind of assignment, and I don't want to underplay their influence. But for them to be able to make a call that changes the whole United States policy at the national level because of their one little biased thing. And there are judges out there that were selected, nominated, and confirmed for that very purpose. And they're interfering with a lot of stuff. And Congress needs to say, okay, you guys. Now, some of you may, holy cow, we're running out of time. Some of you may remember Abe Fortas, an LBJ appointee to the Supreme Court. Abe was a scoundrel through and through. And there was an effort to impeach him. He would have been the first Supreme Court justice removed by impeachment. Very good chance of that. Well, he resigned, okay? And it was under threat of impeachment. And I think if some of these things, if Congress were to take up this banner, if you will, and say we're going to clean up our court system, could that have some beneficial things? And then, let's go over here. Holy cow, got to talk fast. If you look at Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, it talks about Congress can make exceptions to where courts can be involved. They could do this. They could say the courts no longer have any say in this subject, XYZ subject, marriage, for example, between a man and a woman, which is violated by the 2015 decision that the Supreme Court made. Marriage is left in the hands of a more local government, okay? But Congress needs to recognize they are not without options to be able to bring rogue things into line, the courts in this particular instance. People need to think about these things. Maybe they ought to close a couple of troublesome federal district courts. And then maybe the judges will go, wait a minute, I've lost my lifetime tenure? What are you talking about? I know, there's just a couple of minutes left. Holy cow, what a bad deal. I'd like to talk about this chat system stuff. Holy cow, Signal. Holy cow, I'd love to talk about that, but we don't have time. Let's talk about the Trump executive orders about election security and integrity. We all want that, no question. But you live and die by executive orders. And if you are just creating things out of thin air as an executive that you don't have authority in, it's going to be changed someday. Okay, and some of Trump things, I mean, you go, wow, yeah, we got to show ID. Oh, man, why not? You got to show it to buy guns and ammunition, to board an airplane, whatever, to do one of the most important things that you do in your civic duty is to vote. And we turn that over. There's things like that. This single-day voting, all the paper ballots, all of these kind of things are desirable. But here's what's interesting. States were intended by the American founders to control the elections. Article 1, Section 4, Clause 4 is also an issue. States have this big responsibility. And the states have been blocked out of that. 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, 17th Amendment, 19th Amendment, 24th Amendment, 26th Amendment, and then the Voter Acts of 65 and more secret. The feds are seizing control of our voting, and Trump has just made a bigger effort at that. And that's wrong. We've got to put it back to the original intent. I know time's gone. Sorry about that, folks, but hot topics everywhere. Maybe we can talk about some more of these next time we get together. But thanks for listening, and stay healthy. We need all the friends we can get.